What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another Top 10 Commander video. This time I would like to continue the rarity lists. I'm going to skip rares for now, but I want to go on to Mythics because Mythics are, they're even rarer, even more rare. As always, if you have not subscribed to the channel yet, I would really appreciate it if you did so. It helps out the channel. 21,000 subscribers. Whoa! So number 10 here we have Fiery Emancipation. This is a relatively newer Mythic rare. And I think just as far as red goes, you might not have the best consistency in whatever strategy you choose, but you're just going to get some crazy power like this every now and then. When it comes to burn, that's what red is capable of doing. You're capable of just tripling the burn damage. So if you deal damage with any kind of source that you have, it's going to be tripled. It's one-sided, so they don't get that benefit. It's not like a Furnace of Wrath. So it's definitely just something I think is ridiculous, and that's usually what Mythics are supposed to be. And if I didn't already say it, the criteria for this, it's going to be kind of the same criteria as I had for my previous videos. When talking about rarity, these are cards that were originally printed as Mythics. So while they could be downgraded to rare rarity, which I don't think is the case for any of these, it's really about showcasing just the crazy power that we get out of Mythics, like why these are Mythics, why that rarity was introduced, because you just get over-the-top cards like these. In number 9, we have Jeweled Lotus. Jeweled Lotus is another newer one, but as far as Mythic rarity goes, sometimes it's not just about the most damaging cards, it's about the value. And Jeweled Lotus is specific for Commander, so it's not going to break any other Eternal formats, which is great. It's really just intended to be a Black Lotus you can only use to spend that mana for on your Commander. So there's a restriction there, it's a healthy restriction, but still a fantastic card, making it so easy for you to get your game going by getting your Commander out there quicker. Doesn't fit into every deck, but a zero-costed artifact that pretty much means your Commander costs 3 less to cast for the first time is just a must-have for many decks now. And then number 8 is Crater Huff Behemoth. Avacyn Restored gave us some pretty crazy cards, and Crater Huff isn't the only one. As far as Mythics go, it's just a go-to for many mono-green decks, many creature-based decks. If you're able to get a lot of them out there, just any kind of deck that focuses on creature production, whether it's tokens or not, you're going to want to Crater Huff Behemoth because that's a lot of power and toughness all your creatures are going to gain, and Crater Huff itself has haste. So it's a win con. If not a win con, you're definitely going to hit them for a lot of damage. But this is again what I'm talking about here. Mythic rarity, you're just going to get the most over-the-top cards. And that's really what I wanted to talk about with this list, is just these cards that blow your mind. Like the first time people saw Crater Huff, they probably couldn't believe it. And number 7, here we have Purphoros, God of the Forge. Now Purphoros to me is the best god. Not just from Theros, from Amonkhet, all of those different sets. Purphoros is so simple, but incredibly powerful. An indestructible red enchantment that deals 2 damage to each opponent whenever a creature enters under your control. That is so easy to abuse with creature tokens, that is so easy to abuse with ETBs, any kind of blink strategy. It is itself a win con. So you get an indestructible enchantment that can act as a win con. And it just belongs in so many red decks. I can't say that for all the other gods. I mean, there are some pretty good ones. But as far as like actually helping you to win the game, Purphoros does that more so than I think pretty much every other god. And then number 6, we have Razzaketh the Foul-Blooded. Another example of the power from the Mythic rarity. Now, this would probably be Grizzlebrand if Grizzlebrand wasn't Grizzleband. But Razzaketh is in the same way a value engine. Like, that's all he is. You just sacrifice a creature, you tutor. That's insane. Again, with creature production, that's a big focus for a lot of decks. So while you want to deal a lot of damage with a Crater Huff Behemoth or a Purphoros, you get a lot of creatures out there to sacrifice, so you get to search up your combo pieces. But in the same vein as Grizzlebrand, you're just getting a lot of value off of that. You're getting the cards that you need to combo with, you're getting the cards that you need to win with, all at the cost of creatures and paying life. And in Commander, it's all about what are you willing to trade for this payoff. And Razzaketh gives you that payoff. Number 5 here, just a ridiculous card. Every time I see this, I just wonder why they thought this was a good idea. It's just way too powerful. Omniscience. You do have to pay a lot of mana to get it out there, but once you do, you don't have to pay any more mana for any of your other spells. You do run into the occasional problem where you're not able to pay alternative costs, where you're not able to pay anything into X for free. But, I mean, outside of that, you're probably going to build your deck around cards that you are able to play for free, and this is going to be just insane. The card just says you play cards for free. I mean, that's it. Number 4 is the Greathenge. If there's a card I would say is the most overpowered and just all around useful, out of the last few years it's probably the Greathenge, right up there at the top. An insane amount of value here. You get cost reduction, which is super easy to get because hey, you're playing a creature deck anyway. You play a creature, you draw a card. You can tap it for mana, gain life. I mean, it's all around useful. It belongs in so many creature decks now. The only thing holding it back from being in more decks is just how crazy expensive it is, which I think it's well deserved because it does everything. It's a mana rock, gains you a little bit of life, which is also underrated, and like so many other great cards in green, it rewards you for playing creatures by filling your hand. So, number 3, we have a card that I think is even more busted, and I think we all know it's busted, Consecrated Sphinx. The third best mythic in my opinion for the Commander format. And while I've complained about this card and not liking its design, thinking that it should be something a little bit more controlled, I think in retrospect, it does draw enough hate to warrant not banning it. As soon as you play it, there's not a single person at the table who's like, oh, this is fine. Everyone's trying to get rid of it, so it doesn't have any sort of way of protecting itself. It is counterable. It's just one of the most overpowered blue spells. And that's saying something because blue tends to be overpowered. And then number 2, we have Ugin the Spirit Dragon. Ugin is, in my opinion, the best planeswalker for the Commander format. All of the abilities are useful, and it's an instant problem solver. You get to deal with most colored spells of a certain mana value or lower, and if you do happen to get to that ult, well, you set yourself up pretty well in a Commander game. While Ugin is more dominant 1v1, because that second ability allows you to just board wipe, like so many other good planeswalkers, it makes it easier for you to deal with several other opponents. Mythic rarity is certainly not uncommon when we're talking about planeswalkers, but not all planeswalkers are created equal. And Ugin the Spirit Dragon, even more so than something like Nicol Bolas, I think it's just one of the most, if not the most powerful planeswalkers ever made. Now before I go on to number 1, let's talk about some honorable mentions here. We have Nyxbloom Ancient. I think this is another example of just power at the mythic rarity. What you expect out of a mythic, you just want something to be overpowered. That's exactly what this card is. Master of Cruelties is another really fun mythic. Just something that says, hey, you knock your opponent down to 1 life. It's just brutal, and that's what you expect out of red and black at the mythic level. With 1000-Year Storm, another great example of power in a mythic. This is what a mythic rare should be. If you go off in a turn and you cast a lot of instants and sorceries, you're likely just gonna win. And let's talk about the Praetors. I mean, all of them. I think they're all useful in Commander, and they're all great examples of mythic creatures, just bombs. So number 1 here, Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, and I guess Ulamog the Infinite Gyre. I personally like Kozilek a little bit more, but the Annihilator on these creatures, it's really what keeps them up here for me. If we're just talking about the best mythics of all time, I think it's the Eldrazi. I think you could also include some of the newer ones. You could of course put the new Ulamog, I think that removal's great. The new Kozilek is also a pretty solid Commander option, and Emrakul. So I mean, the Eldrazi are just brutal altogether, but this is what you expect when we're talking about overwhelming power at the mythic rarity. For the longest time, if you saw a creature this expensive, it didn't do this much. But mythic rares just introduced a whole nother power level to this game. And like everything else, the Eldrazi, especially these two with the Annihilator ability, they take over games and they win you games. But anyway, let me know what you think about my top 10 picks for the best mythics in the Commander format. As always, if you have not subscribed, like, comment, share, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Void here signing off. Have a wonderful day.